BBOR, Black Box Online Radio, coming to you from West Virginia. So I don't know what you guys like to do, but I like to listen to audio when I'm trying to sleep. I mean, it can be a podcast, presentation, TV show, just some type of audio when I'm trying to go to sleep and such. Not really music, just usually when there's just a lot of discussion going on. I mean, that's how I just zone out. And I was trying to do that the other night, and I was just looking for something, and I came across a particular name in the search bar, and then the results really, and that was Helmar Schacht, Schacht. And I recognized this name from a couple uploads that we did last year on the case of Milton Friedman, yes, the economist. And the reason why Helmar Schacht stood out to me was Schacht was the director of the Nazi Central Bank in 1933 and then went on to become the economics minister for Adolf Hitler. So, I also noticed that this thing was from the Stanford University Iranian Studies channel, and I was like, what on earth is this? So instead of falling asleep, I was just sitting there watching this lecture from a woman named Jennifer Jenkins talking about Helmar Schacht and his relationship with Iran in the 1930s, and I was just like, I really, really should not be doing this. I'm going to regret this tomorrow, but, watching some kind of 2-hour presentation, but it pulled me in, it really did. Now we're going to say a few far-out and conspiratorial things. We're going to discuss some of the more extreme conspiracies in this, but if we can just say one serious thing, I think what they wanted us to learn from this is that Nazi Germany affected the world on a global scale. And you might be thinking, well, yeah, sure, World War II, right? But very specifically, Nazi Germany affected the world on an economic level that is very rarely discussed. They might talk about it on the European continent, as argued by Jenkins. They talk about it on the European homeland, but when you're dealing with the Middle East, when you're dealing with America, and even South America, people often overlook this fact. Okay, though, so what's the whole thing like? Why would there be any type of relationship between Nazi Germany and Iran? Well, Helmar Schacht visited Tehran. He was treated like a royal guest, and there's like an enormous amount of relationship building. Nazi Germany wanted Iran as an ally because Iran was allied with the Soviet Union, and this was meant to be an economic relationship. And that's exactly what we were talking about Milton Friedman. Why even bring up Milton Friedman in a discussion about Nazis? Well, to go into a little bit more of the extreme stuff, last year on the channel we read the book The Ugly Truth about Milton Friedman, did a couple uploads about it, and that book, written by the Lyndon LaRouche movement, someone who doesn't have the highest amount of credibility, argued that Milton Friedman copied the economic policies of Helmar Schacht. And Helmar Schacht's name is spelled Hjalmar. I had never seen it before. I just kind of assumed that it was an unfamiliar German name or a less popular German name, but his first name was actually Danish. His mother was Danish, and but he was raised completely in Germany, as I gathered from Jenkins' lecture. But the whole thing is that Milton Friedman copied the economic policies of the Nazi German economics minister, the director of the Nazi Central Bank from 1933. And one of the things about Helmar Schacht is that he was out of power prior to 1939. So this is one of the reasons why he was acquitted of war crimes. But he was instrumental in the building of what we now know today as Nazi Germany. He was instrumental in establishing the economic framework. And this is when things start to get a little bit conspiratorial when they say that Milton Friedman copied his policies and then began advising governments around the world, like the government of Chile and even the government of the United Kingdom for a time. Milton Friedman was an advisor for them too. Okay, so then you got like Milton Friedman spreading Nazi ideology around the world, not to mention here in the United States of America, the Chicago School and all that. What's really going on here? Well, another point that was argued in that book, The Ugly Truth about Milton Friedman, was that the British Empire and Nazi Germany were enemies. They were enemies, right? Enemies in terms of military powers, enemies in terms of political power. But when it came to economics, they were allies. They were allied in terms of economics, particularly through the interactions between Helmar Schacht and the British economics minister, the Minister of Finance in the United Kingdom. So it's like the thing that the Lyndon LaRouche movement really tries to convey to you is that the global elite power circles are all interconnected. The extreme power circles, doesn't matter if they're Nazis and it doesn't matter if they're from the British Crown, not to mention, though, they vilify the entire British Empire as the sort of financial power behind the New World Order. They call it the British system of political economy based on speculation, shortened as the British. It's very similar to the concept of the New World Order that you'll hear about in various forms of conspiracy literature. But other ways that the Nazis get tied into conspiracy theories are very simple, such as the Bilderberg Group. Maybe you saw Alex Jones's interview in around, was that 2012 or 2013 or something, when he appeared on the Sunday Politics. He was debating Andrew Neil and David Aronovich. We talked about David Aronovich and his book Voodoo Histories on the channel. And what he was saying is that Prince Bernhard of the Netherlands was a Nazi sympathizer, and he went on to become the first leader of the Bilderberg Group, and even to going as far as to say that the Bilderberg Group launched the EU. I mean, the EU was a Nazi plan, and when Prince Bernhard was outed as, for his Nazi connections, he had to step down instead of the Bilderberg Group. And this really goes to show that when it comes to things like race and religion and background, those things have no relevance in terms of the New World Order theories and how they function. It has no relevance in terms of oligarchy and how it functions. Look at the people we've been talking about, Milton Friedman, or how about another person like Henry Kissinger, who is heavily tied to the Bilderberg Group, which was allegedly some type of Nazi plan that's trying to push for an agenda, the ultimate lobbying meeting that's going on behalf of the EU, which was a Nazi plan, and one of their most influential members, Henry Kissinger, is Jewish. Well, what's going on there? 13 members of his family died in the Holocaust. I'm reminded of a program from Dr. Keith Suter, who hosts a show called Global Truths. I really like the way he narrates. Very engaging. You don't miss a single word. Some people you kind of space out on. With him, I never miss a word. And what he said was just like, high-level politicians don't have moral compasses. And that'd be another serious note. I know we're talking about some crazy stuff like Bilderberg Group and New World Order, but he's just like, high-level political players do not have moral compasses. They're just driving forces toward power. Now, that's some of the stuff that I think might have a high degree of potential. But what they're trying to argue is, you got interconnected circles of very powerful and very influential people. Look at somebody like Milton Friedman, though, being an advisor to multiple governments. I mean, that is its own degree of power. And Milton Friedman said it better than anyone on national television in the United States of America. Greed takes many forms, right? It's not only about money, it's also about power. I mean, he did a very articulate thing about greed. No matter what we say about him here, I mean, he did a very articulate thing about how greed functions when he was on the Phil Donahue show. It's a great segment. Some of the best episodes that Phil Donahue ever put out. If you ever get a chance to go back and watch those. But the thing is, though, you got elite power circles that are interconnected. And it's like that expression, the house always wins. Well, in this case, it's like the oligarchs always win. They got people fighting this thing in World War II, but in reality, there's an alliance between the British Economics Ministry and the Nazi German Economics Ministry. They're on the same side. The elite power circles are all on the same side. And they're talking about this a little bit now that we have Iran mentioned in a different context, with the possibility of a war with Iran. Warfare is class warfare because the global elites, the oligarchs, many people who are connected to the high power circles are not going to be dying in the wars. It's going to be the average, everyday individual. So, what can we say about all that? I mean, I really have to say, somebody wrote a very interesting comment once that I read in 2017 when they said, YouTube is one of the few places where you can have open and honest discussions. And somebody replied to that comment by saying, there's also a lot of horse shit on YouTube. I think you're getting a little bit of both when you're kind of looking into these things about the elite power structures, the New World Order, the Bilderberg Group. I mean, of course, there's going to be a grain of truth in a lot of these theories, but there really is a lot of horseshit that a lot of people mix into it. They're using outrageousness to kind of pull you into it. And is everything we've said about those Nazi financier plans to control Europe and then control the world really legitimate? I don't believe all of it. No. Do I believe that people are going to be manipulating the power system for their own benefit? Yes. That much I believe, and that much I believe is real. But there's also a conspiracy theory, though, about Nazi Germany involving Antarctica. Recently on This Week, we were talking about Jonathan Kay and his book Among the Truthers, and one conspiracy theory that he encountered in that, it's a conspiracy theory skeptic book. We did 2 uploads about it on this channel. And what they said about that one was that there's this theory out there that Adolf Hitler wanted to take over Antarctica so that he could go down there and communicate with aliens. And I'm like, I gotta know more about that. I'm just getting hyped up for that one. So I hope we explore that one in the future. But I can say though, there really was a Nazi conquest plan of Antarctica, and they made a claim to Antarctica, and their claim was called Neuschwabenland. Excuse my horrendous mispronunciation. I'm not German. I'm a West Virginian. Yes, but it's called Neuschwabenland. I believe in English it's New Swabia. Swabia, New Swabia, or something like that. And I was talking to about it when I found out about it when I was 18, and I was in college, and I talked to some guy he was either majoring or minoring in history. Hey, have you ever heard about this Nazi claim to Antarctica? And he's like, no, I don't believe it. But you know what I mean? You can read that stuff on the internet, and I think that's a very big tipping point. If it's on the internet, it must be true. Or at the very least, if it's on the internet, it's going to get your juices rolling a bit. Okay. Here's a question for you. Challenge question for the day. How much do you believe that Nazi Germany had an influence on the world? To what level did Nazi Germany have an influence on the world? Or is this just a bunch of nonsense that people are blowing out of proportion so that they can use outrageousness to have their own brand? What do you have to say? That's all for me now. If you have any comments at all, please drop a comment below. If you like this upload, you can hit the like button. And I'll include a link to that stuff about Jonathan Kay and conspiracy theories if anyone wants to check it out. And most importantly, please leave some comments so that we can talk a little bit more. Until next time.